What's going on, everybody? Teach back again with another video and coming at you with another 2024 NFL mock draft. And hey, I said last week if the Bears are picking 1 and 2, bet your bottom dollar I'm coming back at you with another mock, and I am not gonna break my word there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that like button. If you do, subscribe if you're new to the channel. And you know the normal rundown for all this. Let me know what you think about each pick down below in the comments section. Who's your favorite team? Did you like that fit? And ultimately, who do I have going too high? Who do I have falling too low? Give me your thoughts on this 2024 mock draft. So let's go ahead and jump into it. As noted, the Chicago Bears picking 1 and 2. Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 overall pick. No real major surprise there. I think whoever's holding the number 1 pick should take Caleb Williams. He's not a perfect prospect, but he's going to be about as close as you get, because you can always, you can nitpick with any, 21, 22-year-old college quarterback. I think Williams can play a little bit better in structure, but he does so much special stuff that he's going to be the first overall pick. And then here at 2, I kind of deliberated, and if the Bears continue to pick 1, 2, I'll explore mocks where they trade down, and I think Ryan Poles could get a hell of a haul moving back from 2, especially when you have a Drake May type of prospect in this class. But for the fun of the exercise, let's have him stick and pick and take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 2. Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., they're going to be 1, 2 in that order on my big board. I do weigh position value into that, so Williams kind of gets a natural bump. But also, you look at the modern NFL, you need more than one wide receiver who's a number 1. I think DJ Moore is a 1, but imagine how much better that offense with Caleb Williams would be if you had DJ Moore and Marvin Harrison Jr. Again, we'll explore mocks where they trade back at an Olu Fashanu or beef up that defensive line or something like that. I think all that would be great options, but today, let's stick and pick. We're not going to have any trades here in this first round mock. And let's go load up that offense. Caleb Williams, give him his running mate of the future, Marvin Harrison Jr., and then all of a sudden you have 3 receivers, Darnell Mooney, DJ Moore, and Marvin Harrison Jr. I really want to see a whole lot of moving them around, both playing inside and out, who plays on the left side, who plays on the right. I think you can do a lot of damage with that trio. Then we get to the Raiders at 3. No-brainer selection here, Drake May. They signed Jimmy Garoppolo to a multi-year contract, but in a lot of ways with its guarantees, it's kind of a 1-year deal. And obviously, he's already missing time. He's not going to play a full 17. Raiders need a long-term answer there. And I think Drake May I think he's legit, man. Especially now that UNC is getting Tez Walker back. He at least has one legit wide receiver. But he's been making do without it. This is kind of converted into a run-heavy offense because they don't have a whole lot of returning pieces on the outside. I think that will change a little bit with Tez playing. But even when he's had it aired out, he's been comfortable throwing to 6, 7, 8 different receivers. He looks poised in the pocket. And honestly, you got to be careful with the NFL comps, but I look and I see a lot of a baby-faced Justin Herbert with Drake May. I think they have a lot of the same traits, a lot of the same upside, and some of the maybe the same flaws coming out of college. And I think May has cleaned up a lot of the stuff that I talked about in preseason, and ultimately handled the shift in his offense really, really well. But I'm really excited to see what that offense looks like now with a legit number 1 potential wide receiver in Tez Walker. So then we get to the Denver Broncos at 4. And, Jared Verse hasn't been as awesome as I thought he would be coming into the season, which definitely pains me to say as he was my preseason edge 1. Right now, I think I still got him there. Him and Latu are definitely close for me. But Verse hasn't been as awesome as I thought, but he still had those, splashes and those moments last year where he looked like a top 10 pick. And he hasn't played bad this year. It's not like he's completely fallen off the face of the earth. He's just not superstar. And there's still plenty of college football season left to go. But then you got the Broncos who just released Randy Gregory out of nowhere. And Baron Browning feels like that's maybe a little bit of flash in the pan with the stuff we saw last year. So edge is really sticking out as a major need right now for the Broncos. And maybe that's also part of why this defense has looked so rough, that secondary being left out to dry. I think Jared Verse, if he lives up to the prospect I think he can be, he goes a long way to shoring up that issue on that side of the ball. Next up, the Minnesota Vikings. And I got to be completely transparent. The pick's going to be J.J. McCarthy. I don't view J.J. McCarthy right now as a top 5 pick, let alone a first rounder even. To me, he's more of an intriguing, toolsy, upside, second-round guy. But he's got awesome arm talent, multi-year starter. He's got a lot of the stuff that I think NFL teams are going to like that he has coming out of college. And ultimately, his schedule is really backloaded this year at Michigan. So, once we get the Ohio State game, if they make the college football playoff, assuming they do, what matchups to get there and how well does he play? So this could be a guy that could have a meteoric rise back half of college season into the college football playoff because we get to see him ball out against stiff competition. Or he'll flop and then he just, again, kind of goes to this guy into the NFL draft as a second, third round guy who has a lot of tools and traits. You're intriguing, but we didn't really see it in college. And that's kind of where I am with him right now. He's had some good games against bad schools so far this season. I'm more intrigued by the upside that I can say that he is a slam dunk first round quarterback. But we haven't talked about JJ McCarthy yet in any of these mock drafts, so I always like to change it up. Don't want you guys watching the same video over and over and over. Minnesota needs a long-term answer at quarterback. And I can even see where Kevin O'Connell's hey, the arm talent that Matt Stafford had, that's the type of guy I want. And that Sean McVay had with Matt Stafford, that's the guy I want. So maybe he would prioritize and take the shot with someone like a JJ McCarthy. All right, next, the New York Jets. I'm going to go Olu Fashanu. Easy selection here. Dwayne Brown hasn't been great. But Guy Becton fine at left tackle, but, in a perfect world, you could have Olu be, an absolute brick wall at left tackle. You move Mekhi Becton over to right tackle, and you got a really nice tackle duo moving forward. So, yeah, they need one more tackle in there, and Olu Fashanu right now, for my money, the best pass protector in this class. So, just kind of a natural fit there, and we'll see how much longer the Jets are picking at 6. This is going to be an intriguing week up ahead for Zach Wilson. Does he pick up where he left off last week against KC, or is that a flash in the pan, and, yeah, maybe the Jets are picking this high. Next, the New England Patriots. I'm actually going to go back to the quarterback well here. I'm going to go Quinn Ewers. Obviously, the big game against Bama, been decent since then. He's been pretty good. And there's a ton of talent there, right? Top high school recruit coming out. And, I don't think anybody denies that Ewers is the talent. It's just he's been so inconsistent. But hopefully we see more of, obviously we want to see more of the Bama game type of performance out of Quinn Ewers. But even when we've gotten to see the 2 weeks since then, I'd be content with seeing that the rest of the way because we've seen him step up in big games, rise to the moment, but then also not lose you games in, more even fought matchups or in games where Texas is the better side. So, yeah, and I can see a world where New England ultimately is moving on from Mac Jones. I don't know. I don't think they pulled him last week because they're ready to make a move. But at this point, I don't know. He's just fine, but you're getting towards the end of that rookie contract. I can see where, and he also just, I don't know, him and Bill Belichick, something there doesn't seem like they jive with one another. So I could see them being willing to move on and reset that, rookie contract window, move on from Mac Jones, get whatever assets you can, and maybe Quinn Ewers is that guy moving forward in the future. Next, the Cincinnati Bengals. I hate repeating picks in consecutive mocks, but dude, if Brock Bowers falls to the Bengals, I mean, that's a heavenly scenario right there. You let Tyler Boyd walk, and then Brock Bowers, even if he's a little small to play tight end, fine. Play Brock Bowers at slot. I'm fine with it. Let him be a yards after the catch weapon that he is for Georgia, and let him just feast over the middle of the field and really bully smaller defenders because I think he plays stronger than the 235, 238 that he probably is. And yeah, he's probably 6'2.5" to 6'3". So he's a small tight end, but I think the Bengals would be just fine with that. And plus, also, we're thinking about, what are they going to do with T. Higgins? So just bringing another pass catcher is probably for the best. Just making sure that Joe Burrow has at least Jamar Chase and one other guy. But in a perfect world, it's Bowers working in the middle of the field, kind of being that tight end slot hybrid, and then T plus Jamar on the outside. That's the perfect case scenario, but we'll see how much longer Cincinnati's even staying in the top 10. Hopefully we see that turn around beginning this week against Arizona. Sorry, Cardinals fans. That being said, I don't think that game is as easy of a layup as a lot of people have been talking about it like it is. Speaking of the Arizona Cardinals, we get to the 9th overall pick. I'm going to give him Kool-Aid McKinstry. We went corner last week with Cooper DeJean, and I think that could be an interesting, kind of a hybrid player, slot corner, strong safety. That's kind of where I'm figuring DeJean's going to play at the next level. But Kool-Aid McKinstry, long, lanky corner, and man, Arizona definitely needs some reinforcements there on the outside. They've been a better team than I think a lot of people expected, myself included. But that secondary, you can still see they're vulnerable there. So I think Kool-Aid McKinstry, that number one corner potential goes a long way, and really just providing that much length. He's not like a god-tier athlete, but he's not a bad one. So I think he comes with some scheme versatility there between man and zone. So that kind of gives you some flexibility long-term for Arizona before you really figure out what is your identity on that side of the ball. Next, the New York Giants. I'm going to go to the wide receiver position here and go Malik Neighbors. I'm not going to say Malik Neighbors. My comp for him is going to be Stephon Diggs, but I see a lot of that because he plays a little bit bigger than he actually is. He's a really fluid athlete and route runner, aggressive to the football, sure-handed. There's a lot of Stephon Diggs in Malik Neighbors, and obviously Brian Daboll there in New York. Immediate connection to try to find that Stephon Diggs type of weapon, and really that's what we saw unlock Stephon Diggs in Buffalo with Daboll there, so I could see him trying to prioritize that. They did draft Jalen Hyatt in the 3rd round, but Neighbors and Hyatt they're playing a different role in this offense. And I think also Darren Waller on top of that. Really adding Neighbors, I think, frees up those other two guys a lot. And I mean, I know quarterback could be interesting here, but I'm just going to say that Daniel Jones is going to be a New York Giant next year. I know there's a lot of frustration showed at the, basically throughout that entire last Giants game. And that's a tough look, but there's a lot of guaranteed money. It's basically a 2-year contract extension, and I think they're going to at least play him out throughout the next upcoming NFL season. Then maybe we can start talking about New York Giants, and maybe they'll tap into the 2025 NFL draft class. Then we get to the Green Bay Packers. Easy selection here. I got to go Joe Alt. I mean, the Packers almost allowed a 50% pressure rate on Thursday night against the Lions. Now, I know that's, it's almost 10 days ago now when you're seeing this video. And, I know it was just kind of a tough matchup. And, Zach Tom's a better player than what he actually looked like that game. Aiden Hutchinson is kind of an emerging superstar. But I still think David Bakhtiari, you gotta turn the page there. He's not coming back. I think either his career is done in Green Bay or his career is done, period. And I think if you get Joe Alt there on that left side, you move Zach Tom over to right tackle, which I think Tom can play either spot. But either way, whoever plays where, Alt plus Zach Tom, that feels like a really nice tackle tandem moving forward, putting Jordan Love in a better ecosystem, because you're going to at least have him ideally starting one more season because they did give him that extension as opposed to picking up the 5th-year option. And if they clean up that offensive line play, Love is still erratic. He's still working on the ball placement, but you could sell me on one more offseason of work with LaFleur where the ball placement gets cleaned up. You shore up the O-line. There's weapons there that are getting older and more mature. All of a sudden, maybe Green Bay becomes an interesting kind of breakout candidate type of team. But we'll see where they're drafting, obviously, in the first round, and if they do address the offensive tackle position. Next, the New Orleans Saints at pick 12. This is where I'm going to have Cooper DeJean come off the board. Again, kind of thinking strong safety, nickel corner. And yes, there's Tyrann Mathieu there, but ultimately DeJean could also play free safety. I also think Tyrann Mathieu's fine in that role too. So Marcus May, I think he's only got one more year on his contract. Same can be said about Tyrann Mathieu. So you're also kind of future-proofing that position. Losing a playmaker like the Honey Badger, it's kind of good to have that next guy up. And you almost see kind of the same thing with the Detroit Lions right now. Yeah, they got a 1-year deal with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but that doesn't stop them from drafting Brian Branch. In a lot of ways, those two guys can work on the field at the same time, but also it kind of paves the way for Brian Branch to be that CJ Gardner-Johnson-esque player long term. And I think the Saints could kind of do the same thing here with Cooper DeJean. Or he ends up playing outside corner, and right now they're getting some good play from Marshawn Lattimore and Alontae Taylor, so that might not be the priority, but also he could play some free safety and maybe be that Marcus May replacement, but ultimately that Marcus Williams replacement that they really still haven't replaced since he left to go to Baltimore. Next, Arizona Cardinals at 13. I'm going to go upside play here. I've almost always had Johnny Newton or Jazon Newton come off as the first IDL taken off the board, but let's go Leonard Taylor. Man, he's looked really good this year at Miami. Still think he's winning off of athleticism and size more than like moves, but when you can win with athleticism and length and size, that buys you time to kind of figure out how to be a better pass rusher in the actual, usage of hands and gaming an offensive lineman. So I'm really intrigued by, kind of an upside play here from Arizona. You could get the higher floor, lower ceiling guy in Newton, but I'm going to go high ceiling with Taylor. And right now I look at that IDL, and I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think the edge group's been better than I expected. Breakout season from Dennis Gardeck, and, Cam Thomas has had a couple plays. That interior is still pretty rough right now, and I think Leonard Taylor patches up that hole. And speaking of IDL, this is where I'm going to have the Chargers go as well with Johnny Newton. Again, kind of, I don't want to say the reciprocal or the inverse of what Taylor is, but Newton's the higher floor, lower ceiling, and Taylor's the higher ceiling, but maybe a little bit of a lower floor. So Newton gives you an immediate impact player in the run game, which how many years now have we talked about the LA Chargers needing some run game reinforcements? But also, he's a fine pass rusher. He's really quick off the line of scrimmage, knows how to use his hands, has a full arsenal of moves. He's refined from that standpoint. So this is a guy you can draft and immediately play as a 3-down starter. Plus, you add Tuli Tuipulotu. Hopefully, Joey Bosa could stay healthy. Khalil Mack's coming off an awesome game this last Sunday. All of a sudden, you have a really nice group of guys there across that front defensive line to make havoc against opposing quarterbacks, which you need right now because that secondary is pretty rough. All right, then we get to the Houston Texans at pick 15. I'm going to go Kalen King here. Last year, the deal for Steven Nelson, and I think, long-term, a corner tandem of Derek Stingley Jr. and Kalen King. I mean, freaky athletes, ton of upside to be had there with that duo. King may not be having the most, unbelievable season at Penn State, but I still trust the tape we got to see last year. He's sticky in man coverage. His change of direction skills are off the charts. He'll be a combine warrior for sure. Can't wait to see his 3-cone. And again, I just think moving on from Steven Nelson, getting a little bit younger at that position, Kalen King, Derek Stingley Jr., that's an awesome 1-2 punch there on the outside. But, I think there's some other holes on that side of the ball where Houston can still address. So, I'm not locked into this. 15 is kind of a weird spot for me picking for Houston. I didn't love the options, but ultimately felt like Kalen King fell too far in this mock draft, so had to get him off the board here. Next is the Washington Commanders. Let's go Kingsley Suamataia. Right now, my OT3, he's still awesome in pass protection. Taking a bit of a step back in run blocking where, last year at BYU, struggled with that in the first half, got a lot better in the second half of the season. Looks like he's kind of backslid in that regard this season, but ultimately, you draft a tackle. you're mostly concerned with what he's going to do in pass protection. And also, Sua Mataia, yeah, maybe you view him as a little bit of a raw prospect. You don't have to move on from Charles Leno as soon as you make this pick. Like, I could see a world where Leno starts for one more season and then Sua Mataia becomes that left tackle starter of the future. And ultimately, you could go with Latham or Mims. I don't hate that either. But they just signed Andrew Wiley. Maybe Mims can flip over to left tackle. Maybe Latham can as well. And I wouldn't hate that either. So I want to throw those guys out as options as well if they're looking to immediately upgrade over Andrew Wiley, which I think would be a good decision. But also, you could just think long-term, Charles Leno's getting older. We need to find a replacement. Also, you could probably use an upgrade right now. I think Sua Mataia brings that specifically from a pass protection standpoint. Next is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's go Laiatu Latu. I mean, he's making a run to be my top edge rusher in this class. Uber productive, insane motor because, guy was told he'll never play football again, right? Like, he medically retired. Like, he thought the game was done for him. So he plays every down like it's his last, but he's also so refined with his hands. Enough athleticism. I don't think he'll be a combine warrior, but he'll have a good enough raw athletic score and good enough, times and numbers across the board where he's not being taken off of teams' boards. And that's really the key. He's not going to have any measurement issues or 40 that sticks out as an issue. Nothing like that. He's a good enough athlete who knows how to play the position, technically refined, and has literally no end of the play, it feels like. Off the charts production of the last 2 seasons at UCLA. So I definitely like him as a first rounder. And honestly, 17 feels like a steal right now. And right now, Jacksonville, it's Josh Allen and not a whole lot else in regards to pass rush. So Laiatu Latu, freak athlete, Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen. All right, that's a pass rush that starts to capture my attention. Then we get to the Los Angeles Rams here at pick 18. I'm going to go Denzel Burke, a guy who's been shut down this season. He's had good seasons. We were looking for him to find that next year and become great. And he's finally kind of turned that corner at Ohio State. And he has the size, athleticism, arm length. I think a good enough athlete to where if he's playing man, he's not an issue. I think enough change of direction skills to be good enough in zone. And again, you factor in the arm length. He can get his hands into some receiving pockets. I like him in either scheme, really. And it's just a position where the Rams have got to get better, right? Like, if you're starting Darion Kendrick, a guy who ran like a 4.7 40, that's just not going to fly. They definitely need to get better there on the outside. I think Denzel Burke's a good step in the right direction there. Next, the Atlanta Falcons. Let's go Shadir Sanders. I don't know if he'll come out this class. I could see where he goes back and wants to be a part of the 2025 QB class because, well, I don't know, the 2024 class looks pretty loaded, so maybe he wants to say that the 25 class can't be that good. Not a bad business decision. Also, maybe he just wants to play another year under his pops and see what Colorado builds toward. Can't hate that either. But if he does come out, this is a perfect fit, right? Like, how good of an athlete and how good he is with the ball in his hands and as a runner, that's going to be great for Arthur Smith, and it feels like you can do maybe as much you're doing with Desmond Ridder, if not more. But also, he's just way better in regards to ball placement, getting the ball out quickly, timing his throws appropriately. Like, he's just a much more refined and better passer just across the board right now than Desmond Ridder is. Doesn't have a huge arm, but neither does Ridder. So you're not really losing anything. And for that Arthur Smith scheme, you want to run the ball, and you're going to get the ball into your playmaker's hands like a Drake London, like a Kyle Pitts, like a Bijan Robinson. And I don't think you need an insane howitzer for Shadir Sanders to be able to do that. And he's got enough of an arm to be able to play at the NFL level. He's just going to be closer with Joe Burrow than he is like a Justin Herbert. But that's not an issue, especially for that offense. So I like that fit a ton. We'll see if he does end up being someone who declares. But until then, we're going to have a lot of fun with him in these mock drafts. Next is the Indianapolis Colts at pick number 20. I'm going to go Keon Coleman here. I was never crazy about Alec Pierce, and it feels like Keon Coleman's just kind of the better version of that. Similar height, but Keon Coleman a better athlete. I think he does a little bit more in the air in regards to contested catch situations. And honestly, probably a little bit more of a dynamic athlete that you can get incorporated in the underneath stuff too, and yards after the catch scenarios. And man, I think if Coleman is an upgrade over Pierce, you got your possession guy and Michael Pittman. You got your slot threat, yards after the catch, kind of just jackrabbit who can work underneath, and Josh Downs. And then you add Keon Coleman, who can do a little bit of everything, but has plenty of ability to stretch the field and win in those contested catch spots. So it feels like it rounds out that wide receiver trio really nicely there for Anthony Richardson, which obviously is going to be an emphasis moving forward. He can do a lot with his legs, but let's make sure there's enough playmakers there on the outside around him. Then we get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to go Kamari Lassiter, a guy that I don't think I've had in the first round yet in any of my recent mocks. But a guy who's playing really well at Georgia, and kind of like Denzel Burke, has the size, athleticism, arm length, checks a lot of those boxes. We just need to see his game kind of go to the next tier. I think Burke's been a little bit better this year, so that's why Burke goes off the board first. But again, we haven't talked about Lassiter, and he's playing really well, and he's doing it in the best conference in college football, and he's doing it for one of the best defenses in college football, right? So, and Pittsburgh, look, I love Levi Wallace. He's got a great story for how he got in the league, but he just is not that great. And Pat Pete is completely washed. So ideally, we're talking about a 1-2 tandem of the future of Joey Porter Jr., Kamari Lassiter. Maybe Pittsburgh can incorporate some more, man press into that, or maybe even just some more like press, cover 3. You can play press zone, and I think both those guys would be really, really good at that. And obviously, we saw the Steelers draft the Bulldog in the first round last year. Not far-fetched to think they might go back to that. Well, at 22, let's give the Tennessee Titans Chop Robinson. 250 pounds, but I think he plays the run a lot better than that, and that's definitely something the Titans prioritize. They're still probably one of the best run defenses, maybe the best run defense in the league right now, certainly up there. And right now, Harold Landry gets production because he's on the field a lot, and I like Arden Key a good bit. But right now, I feel like they're kind of missing one more dude. And, you look at the PFF grades, not really matching a whole lot of the production maybe those guys get. So I think there's room for improvement there. And also, just the deeper you are at edge, it's not a bad problem to have. Thought about going corner, but we did that last week, so again, don't want to be too repetitive. Wide receiver was interesting here as well. Offensive line, wouldn't hate going back to that well, but I don't love the interior offensive line group other than Graham Barton, and you kind of already drafted that guy, and Peter Skoronski was playing well, so decided to go to defensive side of the ball, wanted to go edge, but I'm really open to a lot of different things here, and maybe you can even go Cam Kinchens, right? How much longer is Kevin Byard going to be there in Tennessee, right? Like that over-the-top free safety. Maybe Cam Kinchens is your replacement there for Byard. Maybe I'll save that for my next mock draft. Then we get to the Seattle Seahawks at pick 23. We go interior defensive line, again, reviewing some PFF grades, and ultimately what I've seen this year. Draymond Jones is more of a pass rusher anyways, but he hasn't been all that loud in regards to pass rush or run defense, and really, again, the run defense grades for all their interior defensive linemen have not been great. And Chris Jenkins has not been anything more than what we thought he'd be at Michigan. He is a high-level run defender who does some stuff in pass rush situations. He's not a great pass rusher, but he does enough there to keep him on the field. And he's an awesome run defender. So he at least answers one of the issues I have right now with that Seattle interior defensive line. But I think there's upside there. I think I see enough to where he could grow into being a competent pass rusher at the next level. May not be there yet, but with some time I can totally see that. But let's at least shore up that interior defensive line in regards to run defense. All right, and also I always feel like I'm going edge for Seattle, so I wanted to mix it up just a little bit. Then we get to the Dallas Cowboys, and Brandin Cooks, I was super excited about that move, but hasn't been super flashy yet. Which hey, we're going into Week 5, a lot of football left. But let's just say maybe that Brandin Cooks move isn't as awesome as it looked on paper, and maybe they're looking to find speed elsewhere. You stay in state, you draft Xavier Worthy, who, oh my God, this guy has an abundance of speed. Him or A.D. Mitchell. I'm fine with either one of those Longhorn wide receivers who are playmakers going to Dallas here, bringing that speed factor. But, I think it's going to be an emphasis as long as Dak Prescott's the quarterback there and he's making a lot of money. If we can stay cheap at wide receiver, let's do it. And also, they're going to be paying CeeDee Lamb. So, any way they can stay affordable there, and certainly Xavier Worthy will have a much cheaper contract than Brandin Cooks does, so could be an opportunity to potentially get an upgrade, but certainly get cheaper at that position while keeping a similar skill set. So wanted to throw it out there, thought it was an interesting idea, and again, to keep them in state, feels like a fun storyline that could play out. Next is the Detroit Lions, and I'm actually going to stay at wide receiver here, kind of similar to what we talked about a little bit earlier on. With who was it actually? It's not the Indianapolis Colts. I feel like a Johnny Wilson just rounds out that wide receiver room really nicely for the Detroit Lions. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is maybe one of the most underrated wide receivers. Nobody talks about him as a top 10 guy, but I think we all should be at least mentioning him in that conversation, right? And then Jameson Williams returns this week. Ideally, he's that over-the-top burner threat. And then I think if you add a 6'7" Johnny Wilson, do some stuff in the red zone, be the possession guy, work the middle of the field. Feels like, okay, now we got the big body, contested catch, come back to the football, possession type, the burner over the top who could do even more than that. But, Jameson Williams' speed is the number one thing that comes to mind. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's just eating up underneath and causing a ton of mismatches out of the slot, and also really good with the ball in his hands. Feels like you got a skill set for any type of game plan you're trying to execute, and honestly some overlap too, just in case of injuries or whatever may come to arise. These guys also have some similar skill sets, so I think adding one more weapon there just basically ensures that that offense is going to have a high floor, right? Like adding a Johnny Wilson and Amon-Ra St. Brown goes down, there's ways to kind of have Wilson pick up with what you're losing with ASB. So I think this is kind of just the one more offensive addition I'm looking to see Detroit add. I think Johnny Wilson actually a perfect fit for the type of receiver they don't have right now. Next, we get to the Miami Dolphins, and I don't know if they'd make this pick, and I don't know if tight end's like a massive need. The defense hasn't been great, but I think Vic Fangio will figure that out. But, I look at the run blocking grade for Jatavion Sanders, and it's like just above 70. It's good enough, feels like, for Mike McDaniel to say, hey, he can block enough. I think he's a good enough athlete too. I don't think he'll be like, a total slug by any stretch of the imagination. So I can see him being a good enough fit where, he blocks enough to stay on the field and does more than what Mike Gesicki was doing for Mike McDaniel last year. And then you're just adding one more insane receiving threat to that offense that features Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and running backs making plays left, right, and center. I mean, Devon Achane at this pace is about to have like a 30-35 touchdown season. Obviously, that's not going to maintain, but the guy's scoring touchdowns left, right, and center. So let's just add one more weapon. Let's just make defenses think about one more guy. So Jadeveon Sanders, want to throw it out there. I think he should be a first-round tight end. And he's a good enough blocker and a good enough athlete to, I think, fit with what Mike McDaniel would want. Also, it's looking like a loaded roster right now, so it's kind of hard to pick and choose where you want to go with the Dolphins pick. Then we get to Tampa Bay here at 27. I'm going to go Graham Barton here. I do think of him more as an interior offensive lineman. Luke Gedekes looked pretty good at right tackle, and then obviously at left tackle, you have Tristan Wirfs. So they got the bookend tackle situation lined up. Now we just need some improvement on that interior offensive line. And who knows, maybe Barton even plays center. That's where Mel Kiper Jr. has him listed as a prospect. I'm taking left guard. But either way, it's a spot where the Buccaneers can certainly get better, and I don't hate the value here at 27. Then we get to the Buffalo Bills. We've already talked about them. Cameron Kinchins. I think, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer getting older. Poyer was brought back on a one-year deal. DeMar Hamlin, obviously it's great that he's playing football, but I think he can be a good player. Cam Kinchins can be a great football player. And basically the continuation of what Buffalo's had with Poyer and Hyde over the last, almost a decade now. So I think it's an opportunity to keep that position of strength. And Kinchins is just an absolute animal. He can do anything. He might even be one of my blue chippers once we get there. I think he could be a great free safety playing over the top, but also be a playmaker inside the box. And he's great in coverage from the slot. I literally ask him to do it, he can do it. So I love adding him into that defense. It does feel a little lazy to go safety for Buffalo. So sorry, Bills fans, I do feel like you're going to be upset with that selection. Next, the Baltimore Ravens. And, I look at Morgan Moses being out for the season now, and I think this is a good opportunity for J.C. Latham to come off the board. Been a little bit better in regards to his penalties, and other than penalties last year, there's not much in his game I have a lot of problems with. It's just when he guesses wrong, he gets handsy, and then it's 10 yards against the offense, right? But he's cleaned that up a little bit. And I'm just looking at him playing right tackle right now for Alabama, potentially a hole that the Ravens are looking to fill. Like the value here at 29, he could easily go higher than this. There's plenty of other tackle-needy teams that could take a shot on J.C. Latham. But I like the fit here for Baltimore, and I really like what he could do for that run game. I think that would be really, really fun. But obviously also held up in pass protection, which is going to be important when you have Lamar Jackson making as much money as he is. So I like the fit, opportunity to kind of move on from Morgan Moses, get cheaper, get younger. Well, not cheaper, because Morgan Moses plays for nothing. Pennies on the dollar, really. But get younger, and hopefully, Morgan Moses bounces back from his injury. But this is an opportunity where, just in case that arises again, the Ravens are prepared if they do hold on to Morgan Moses. And actually staying at the right tackle spot, I'm going to give the 49ers Amarius Mims. He is playing right tackle right now for Georgia. I had somebody comment last week asking if I think he can play left tackle. I do, but I also think the NFL has gotten to a point where, look, Micah Parsons is going to line up against Colton McKivitz this upcoming Sunday Night Football. There's no reason for him to see Trent Williams if Colton McKivitz is, on the field, right? So left tackle versus right tackle, I feel like that value in the difference between the two has been negated because smart defenses are going to put their best pass rusher against your weakest link. It's a weak link position, and defenses would be wise to tap into that. Yeah, I think getting an upgrade there at right tackle. Not that McKivitz has been terrible, but I also think Shanahan hides those guys a lot. So imagine what a potential upgrade with Amarius Mims might look like in that Shanahan scheme. It might not be, Shanahan's hiding a guy. It might be, this guy looks like an absolute superstar potentially at the position. And Mims has got a super high ceiling. All the stuff that people loved about Broderick Jones, Amarius Mims has that same type of, it's the athleticism, it's the movement skills, it's the strength. He has that same package that teams are going to like and that people are going to like and want to see Amarius Mims end up on their favorite team. And I think it'd be a dream come true here for San Francisco. Plug and play at right tackle, and I love the value there at 30. Two more picks to make. I think Emeka Egbuka still is a first-round wide receiver, so I'm going to have him come off the board here. Rome Odunze would also be a fun pick. I think we might have done that last week, though, so again, don't want to be repetitive. Again, I think Egbuka falling to 31s. I know it hasn't been the most insane season, but I think 31's a great value for Egbuka. And I think Rashee Rice could be this fluid athlete, but he's also not the sharpest route runner. I think Egbuka could do a little bit more of that. But it's going to be interesting to see how much Rashee Rice is maybe leaned on down the stretch throughout the rest of the season, and maybe wide receiver doesn't become as huge of a need because of it. And we'll also see, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, all those guys. Maybe somebody steps up even more. And actually, now to think about it, I think we did Jatavion Sanders last week. So it could have gone Rome Odunze, give you more prototypical possession type, but also like Odunze for the yards after the catch. And what he can do as a field stretcher. I think he's a well-rounded guy, but mostly I think people are going to look at him and say, that's a possession receiver. I think he can just do a little bit of everything. Egbuka, though, sharp route runner, someone who's going to get consistently open. And if you're consistently open, Patrick Mahomes is going to find you. All right, last pick to talk about. Let's give the Philadelphia Eagles Nate Wiggins. Look, that secondary was great a year ago. I think we've seen that it's a little bit more flawed than maybe people wanted to acknowledge this offseason. And, that happens. Age, when it hits, it happens. You never know when it's going to come, but eventually it does. And it feels like, James Bradbury's kind of have a hard time adjusting to his role in the slot. Josh Jobe has not been great on the outside, so I think there is an upgrade to be had there. And I think Nate Wiggins, high upside guy, looks like a man press corner, but also a very fluid and gifted athlete to where I think he'd be just fine if they wanted to be a zone heavy team. So I don't think any scheme is going to slow him down or maybe enhance his game. But I certainly don't think he's going to be, sticking out like a sore thumb if he's, in a zone defense where maybe he'd be better in man. Anyways, long tangent aside, that's going to do it. That's the updated 2024 mock draft. I promised y'all if the Bears are picking 1 and 2, we're going to run it back and do another mock. So here it is, the recap of all 32 selections. Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who went too high? Who went too low? Who's your favorite team? And did you like the pick that I gave your squad? And specifically, if you're a Bears fan, what are you doing at 2? Are you looking to trade back, or are you looking to take Marvin there at 2? I'd love to hear your thoughts specifically on that selection if we come to draft day and Chicago's picking 1 and 2. I'd love to hear your thoughts there. But regardless of your team, let me hear your thoughts on the pick that I gave your squad, or if you're just a draft junkie, let me know what you think about this mock draft overall. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I am signing off.